Well, no, I mean, I think I thrive in a fast-paced environment, and all the time I was just building and building and moving to the next step, really. So, yeah, I don't think I left that really. I ended up working, setting up food businesses and developing them, and it was always changing. So I never really got bored, and I was
Mm.
always doing something new. So that was absolutely fine. But then when it got to was when I was about 50, I just don't want to do this anymore. There wasn't anything more I felt I could do in the food industry that would be exciting. I just felt that life was more than just work, and I needed to stop and think again what I was going to do next.
From Coordinate Sports, it's The Drive Fade, a show about sports founders, leaders, and experts, and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Kathryn Morley, CEO of OnSide Youth Zones. Kathryn's career includes a vast array of experience across the transport and commercial food industry. During the episode, we dig into her story and her transition from the logistics industry to the third sector. In her position as CEO of OnSide, she leads the team creating safe environments for children that allow them to achieve and grow. She is committed to scaling the model across the country and increasing their impact. Enjoy the show. Okay, so I'm delighted to welcome onto the show today Kathryn Morley, CEO of OnSide Youth Zones. The national charity network has the mission to help young people across the UK to reach their potential, with over £187 million worth of investment into young people through the OnSide network, and over 650,000 visits to OnSide Youth Zones every year. Really looking forward to diving into all of that. So welcome to the show, Kathryn.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. We always start off looking at kind of our guest journeys, and the best place to start is the childhood. So how would you describe your childhood? If you could go back to kind of primary school age, that sort of
It's
thing.
a long time ago. Well, in some sense, it was quite a normal childhood, but in other senses, it was quite complicated. Every family has issues, but in our family, mental health was a significant issue. And very sadly, when I was 13, my mum took her life, having been psychotic for a couple of years. So, that in itself was traumatic. There was the period before it, which wasn't great, and then obviously the period afterwards. There were four of us, so we were pretty wild, actually. I think we grew up a bit too fast, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of, I guess, challenges to deal with. So, I mean, in terms of your siblings, were they similar age to yourself in terms of age gap, and where
Yeah,
do you sit in that? You're the oldest or
yeah.
youngest?
No, I'm the third. There were four of us in 5 years, so we were a tight group. The Morleys, we were known as.
Yeah, I'm a good company. I'm a third out of four as well. So, yeah, got
Yeah.
something in common there. In terms of school life, what was that like for you? I know we generally, obviously, with us working in the sports sector so much, we always focus on kind of role models or teachers and the role that sport and PE played and just activity. Was that a big part of your life growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely sporty when I was younger, but I think the very typical traditional thing happened that when I was 13, as a girl, I completely opted out of sport completely. So, I'd been in the netball team, I was a bit of a dancer, I liked gymnastics, all of that sort of stuff. 13 comes and bang, the whole lot goes out the window because it just, particularly back then, this is a long time ago. And I think now there's a lot more encouragement for girls to keep going, and there's a lot more positive role models. Back then, really girls, it wasn't cool to look sweaty at all.
Yeah, the opportunities were there. Yeah, do you think that would have changed if you had a role model in the school, like a female PE teacher or something
Yeah.
like that, or maybe even different
I mean,
facilities? Like,
the wear, and I mean, yeah, the facilities weren't brilliant, but one of the things really I think was that they focused on elite only. So, I didn't make the senior school netball team, and so therefore, that was it then. So I think nowadays it's much, much better in terms of breadth of appeal. You're not a failure if you didn't get in the first team these days.
yeah, definitely. We've had guests on before looking at kind of their development through from school, etc. So really, I guess, traumatic time through school, through into secondary school. How did that impact your studies when you went on to the university, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you're in it, you're not really analysing what's happening to you. You're just living your life. And I think that's the truth for all young people. Whatever trauma they're suffering, they're not really focusing on the trauma. They just see it, it's just part of their life, and they're just getting on with it. Now, when I look back, I think, gosh, I did quite well to keep on track. I mean, I was a terrible truant. I was, there was all sorts of stuff going on. But somehow I managed to scrape through and keep myself on track sufficiently to get myself through my A-levels and then off to university. And I feel very fortunate I did do all of that because I've had a fantastic career as a result,
Yeah, I mean, like you said, gone on to university and studying the subjects. So it's economics and accountancy.
That's
So
right, yes.
yeah, so academic subjects. And how did you find your time at uni? Was it, I guess, what
Yeah,
you expected it
no,
to be, or a bit of an escape? Or how was it?
it was another example of being in a situation where I was with people completely unlike myself because I went to Bristol University. It was very upmarket. An awful lot of people had come from fee-paying schools. It was an odd experience for me. It underlined really your differences rather than what you got in common, which
Yeah,
wasn't.
because you grew up in, obviously Bristol's a travel for you, so you grew up in Nottingham, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They all thought I was from the north. I mean, to be honest, when you're in Nottingham, you don't think of yourself in the north, but obviously down in Bristol, it was definitely the north.
And so you're moving on to your early career then, so graduating from university and getting onto was it a graduate program you went into? So initially it was kind of,
Yeah, well, I wanted to be. I had this thing about wanting to be a woman in the man's world. I never took the easy route, so I joined a transport company as on the graduate training program. Yeah, it was a great training program because I did all sorts of different stuff. But I was like the night shift in the frozen food warehouse at -26. With just a whole load of blokes picking orders. I mean, I didn't make it easy for myself, but I mean, I did really well there. I have to say that once they identified that I was actually very resilient and very determined and quite good at what I did, they promoted me very quickly, and I actually had a fantastic career. I've always done really, really well, and I know it's down to your own capability, but it's also down to the people around you giving the opportunities. And I felt very privileged that I got a lot of opportunities.
so in terms of transport, is that kind of haulage and logistics and distribution? Is that what the
Yeah, yeah, it was
organisation was?
all that sort of stuff. Yeah, yeah. So it was loads. It was very unionised. So there was also I learned a lot about the unions then, which this is going back a long way in the 80s. It was very interesting stuff, and it stood me in good stead for everything that came after. I then moved on in the food industry and did lots of other stuff. Ended up dealing with the supermarkets, being sort of commercial director, selling into the major multiples, which is really good experience. And then I was sort of ready, having done both operations and sales, to actually run organisations. So from then on, I basically operated as MD, chief exec, whatever, moving my way through.
Yeah, and sounds like it's quite a fast track into those roles. I mean, is that something that was rare, kind of, I guess, rare back then in terms of
Oh, I
moving
was
up
always
through the
the only
ranks
woman.
quickly? And
I was always the only woman, always. And I can't tell you, some of the stories would make you absolutely cringe about the things that were said and the way you were treated. But yeah, as I say, some of it played to my advantage as well. I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment. I love work. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? And I love to see results, and I love to see people flourish, and I like to make a difference. And, there's nothing worse than if I'm in a job where I'm not making an impact. I'm trouble then.
yes, I mean, in terms of that, I'll probably circle back onto that experience as kind of female executive, especially in those days. But I'm guessing that type of environment was quite intense, really intense. And how did that, I guess, kind of relentless as well in terms of haulage? Never stops, does it? Night shift or 24/7 type environment. How was that on? Kind of how did that affect you in terms of your outlook? Because obviously, you look to move on from that quite early, I suppose.
Well, no, I mean, I think I thrive in a fast-paced environment, and all the time I was just building and building and moving to the next step, really. So, yeah, I don't think I left that really. I ended up setting up food businesses and developing them, and it was always changing. So I never really got bored, and I was
Mm.
always doing something new. So that was absolutely fine. But then when it got to was when I was about 50, I just don't want to do this anymore. There wasn't anything more I felt I could do in the food industry that would be exciting. I just felt that life was more than just work, and I needed to stop and think again what I was going to do next.
Yeah.
Thought I might try being retired, really. I thought I'd give that a go.
How did
But
that?
that
How did
didn't
that
last
go?
very
How long did
long.
that last? I was going to say.
So
Yeah.
it lasted about 3 months. I did learn Reiki. So I decided to put myself amongst people unlike myself. I became a Reiki practitioner, and I've always volunteered. And in my younger years, I volunteered as a rape crisis counsellor and set up incest survivors groups too. I fostered too. I fostered a young girl. So I thought, well, I'll just focus on that side of me. I'll do the volunteering type stuff, and I'll leave the sort of high pressure environment.
So while you were leading these national organisations in the haulage and food industry, you were also doing this all at the same time, or you
Well,
said you?
it supported my work really, because often, in the food industry, to have a strong career, you need to move geographic locations. So when I moved to a new area, then I'd volunteer, because that was a way to find other avenues outside of work to meet new people.
Kind of get embedded in the community
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
Yeah,
just the
same,
community. And also it was something I was very passionate about too. So yeah.
yeah.
But so I retired and as I say, it lasted 3 months and saw the job, chief executive of OnSide Youth Centres. And I read the job description. I thought, that's my job. It sounded like a business, even though it was a charity. The cause was exactly where I feel very passionately about, is helping young people reach adulthood successfully, but not by smothering them, but just giving them loads of opportunities that they can choose from, that they can take their own direction from. So it just looked amazing. Very lucky I got it.
So before we talk about yourself starting with OnSide, maybe good to circle back to kind of the origins of the organisation and how it was launched, etc. Are you able to give us a bit of a potted history or the origin story?
I didn't know when I joined, I didn't know the charity sector that well at all. And what I didn't really understand was how amazing this charity was. I think I just landed very lucky. A guy called Jerry Glover had been running Bolton Lads and Girls Club. He started in the 70s. It was an old mill club. It was in a mill building. It was actually boys only when he started there. But he spent something like 30 plus years there, and he took it from being in the old mill building through to being in a brand new purpose-built building in the centre of Bolton. And he basically, over that period, put together what later became the OnSide model. Amazing facilities, amazing staff, amazing volunteers, great patrons, so bringing the business community in. He used to have the private sector business community leaders on his board. And one year he had a guy called Bill Holroyd chairing. There were 3-year terms, I think, had him chairing the charity. And Bill is a serial entrepreneur. And he was like, why is there only one Bolton Lads and Girls Club? Surely, there should be more. Because by then it was like a renowned youth club across Europe. So he set about trying to tell other people, how great it was and what to do, but nobody seemed to be able to actually manage it's quite a complex thing, the various things. I mean, Bolton had grown up over decades. And anyway, so in the end...
I was going to say, what made it so successful in terms of standing out? Because I know there's a lot of youth clubs.
Yeah, I mean, it was Jerry and the team.
Just that leadership team, yeah.
Well, it was the ambition they had really for young people. They were so ambitious for young people, and they were so ambitious for their charity. It was, it's a large modern building with huge range of activities going on for young people, long opening hours, very, very cheap to get in, still a fee. So it was a membership club, and just fabulous staff and volunteers really engaging well with young people across the building. It's really making it very easy for young people to get involved, removing all those barriers to participation, particularly on the sports front. You don't have to have the right kits, you don't have to know what you're doing, it doesn't matter what shape or size you are. And in fact, they opened up, the building they built had huge amounts of glass in it, so you could look in, you could see the activity, you could even go in and just sit around the edge for a while, and then you'd be drawn in because you'd be looking everyone would be having such a good time. Yeah. And the staff would be so welcoming and warm that you'd end up doing something you never thought to. If I had a penny for every time a young person has said to me, oh, I came here for this, but I am doing that, so it's just amazing.
I guess the backdrop of increased demand for youth activities with other facilities closing and funding being withdrawn, etc. So
I don't know about you, but when I was young, there was a youth club, but I think they're very few and far between now. It's very difficult, and obviously with the pull of social media and all the digital stuff, young people are very much, the enemy used to be being out on the streets, but I think it's just as much being trapped in your bedroom now. It's an equal enemy. Just being on social media, watching other people, you thinking they're having a wonderful life and your life's rubbish, and all this sort of stuff. Whereas when you step foot in a youth zone, all of that opens up to you: friends, opportunities, and sporting opportunities, artistic opportunities, in any way, shape or form. It's the world working properly. They are truly amazing places.
That initial one, which is based in Bolton, just in terms to place it in timeline, when was that? When was the very first youth zone? Obviously, you got the Bolton Lads Centre, but then
Bolton actually was something in the 1870s, I think.
So it
started a long time ago, but it moved into its new building in 2002 under Jerry's leadership.
Right.
And the first youth zone opened, which was built on the very successful Bolton model, but it has evolved as well. It's got better. And, it had new bits of it added as new staff have come in with new ideas as we open more youth zones. But 2011 was when the first youth zone, and that was up at Carlisle. So we were very successful in securing some My Place funding. It was a government scheme back then. And so the first 4 youth zones opened using My Place capital funding. So
and got that model that's working really well in Bolton and then replicating it now. In terms
yeah.
of funding that, of the My Place funding there, is it a specific model in terms of any like commercial funding or local authority? I know you obviously massive focus on partnership, but as these are getting rolled out, is it the same? Do you have the same model of financing every single time, or is it totally different and you have to work on a local level each time you open a site?
Yeah, no, there is a model. There is a model. It's not absolutely rigid, but there is a model. And basically, the fundamentals of it is we're not over dependent on one type of income stream. It's a good, strong, four-legged stool. And so we ask for funding from the local authority. So when we're setting up a youth zone, we're looking for ongoing funding from the local authority. We have a huge number of private sector supporters. They're either individuals who are individually wealthy because they own a business or they used to own a business, but generally they come from the area in which the youth zone is being based. We then also have all the 50p's that the young people give us, the £5 annual membership, that all adds up because obviously the number's quite high. And so we also involve the community through volunteering as well. It is a strong model, it is. And, we can see that through the fact that all of the youth zones that we've got 14 now, are all growing and developing and doing more and more for their communities over time. And it's a virtuous circle. If you can provide a fabulous service for your whole community, focused on young people, but involving the whole community, you can then raise more funding, and then you're able to do more good work, and then you're able to raise more funding again. So it's a virtuous circle that you can get onto, and you can really deliver amazing things for your community.
Definitely. I guess it's really key, like you said, initial one, the team behind it. I guess that's maybe not the challenge, or the real focus is finding the local team in each of those locations to make sure that they can pull it all together and make it a success after the building's built, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, OnSide do the whole job. So we talk to the council, we enthuse them around the project. And once agreed and want to be partners, then we help select the site with them. We raise all the capital, we build the youth zone. We then go on to recruit all of the team that are going to be in the youth zone. We have a computer system that all the youth zones get. We build the websites, we do all the training, we put secondments on. So youth zone staff from all over the network go to help the new youth zone. I mean, that's fantastic in itself. Just that one thing is just amazing in terms of the development for the youth workers who come to help the new youth zone, but also for the new youth zone to get a range of staff who are so experienced and positive and understand and have been where those new staff are now to help get them open. Because these are big projects. You're going to be you're going to have 200 plus young people in a night, 7 nights a week. It's a big old beast.
Making a huge impact in all different communities.
Yeah.
In terms of the financing and cost of opening a new site, so if there's an authority or a location that you've kind of highlighted and you're going to go raise that, what type of funding is required to build something like a youth zone?
Yeah, no, it's obviously ever increasing. And right now, if we started off a conversation now, it would be just under £9 million that we would need to raise. But we raise that with the local authority. We're looking for them to come in with half of that money, and then we commit to raising the other half, which we do, successfully, mainly through national funders, but also through some local individuals and businesses.
You saw that job advert. Obviously, this is a great story. So that job advert was calling to you. What was it like joining the organisation? I guess putting the charity sector up against commercial sector, private sector. What's the transition been
really
like?
Interesting. Really interesting. What I would say is that I found when I got there was, a lot of really, really intelligent people in the charity sector. I think a lot of people would select that because of, where they are and their deep thinking. So I was really impressed with the quality of the people in the charity sector. And lots of things were very similar, having dealt with the major multiples, that wasn't that dissimilar from trying to deal with the National Trust and Grants funders, Big Lottery, others like that. So there were some transferable aspects, and obviously running an operation was pretty similar in terms of delivering new youth zones and helping the youth zones be the best they can be. Probably the area that was most different for me was collaboration, because in the private sector, you wouldn't tell any other business all of your stuff, because that would mean they could possibly get ahead of you. Whereas in the charity sector, it's the exact opposite. Collaboration is king. It's almost your obligation and your responsibility. If you've got something good, you need to share it, because others might be able to make use of some part of what you do. So be it our funding model, be it the way we get young people, find the way we make our offer so relevant to young people of today, or whatever it is, it's all about sharing, and it's all about learning from others as well, and making bigger because of the collaboration. For example, we work very closely with schools. So, for example, young people who aren't in school post-pandemic because, they weren't in school for ages and they don't want to go back. They don't, whatever reason they don't feel comfortable going back. The youth workers know these young people. They can go to their houses, they can chat with them, they can invite them into the youth zone, they can sort of start to build the young people ready to go back to school. So that's great for us because we're helping young people develop their future, but it's great for the schools as well because, they don't have the resources or the ability to sort of, in some cases, do that very detailed on the ground work outside of school.
So it's definitely knocked off some of the competitive edges from
No,
private sector.
It took a while. I mean, the first year, I think I was a bit, what are we doing here? Why are we telling everybody our secrets?
Don't share that.
But yeah, the collaboration is absolutely, in a local community, Youth Zone doesn't operate unless it's got fantastic partners, because we're just a sort of springboard for young people, and they need, we're not an island, we're integrated into all of the other services that are going on, be that other charities, sports, for example, we had 2 kids who were older Youth Zone, Madlow, which just turned out, having picked up a badminton racket, turned out to be really good at badminton. Well, obviously, once they got to a certain stage, we were no use to them. They needed to get out to play. And in fact, they were playing for county, but they went to the badminton club. And I think the lacrosse team there built their junior lacrosse team out of the youth zone as well, So there's lots of examples of where we do the starting, we do the sort of grassroots bit. And then as soon as young people reach a certain standard in different sports, we have to ship them off out. But we'll take them and we'll go with them, because a lot of the barriers around their own confidence and not knowing where to go, if you're in a particular type of family, you might have parents who are able to do all of that for you. You might not have the kit or anything.
Yeah, achieve the potential as well. So that support is going to be vital. I'm really interested in terms of, I'm looking at listening to the kind of setup and actually looking into it myself. It seems like the perfect scenario, perfect facility. Is there anywhere where you think and we'll talk about your kind of vision in it shortly, but is there anywhere where either you've tried a youth zone or it just wouldn't fit in terms of, like, I don't know, maybe it might be more of a challenge in a rural area or something like that? Is it?
Yeah.
Is there a place where you've maybe failures or anything like that along the way, lessons learned, I guess? Or?
Yeah. There's a couple of areas where it gets more challenging. So if the community is very disparate, for example, Cornwall, we were having conversations there, very difficult to put a single centre down where there's lots and lots of small villages and no one natural.
So without alienating, if you put it in one place, it's hard.
Public transport links, if they're not good enough, you need young people to be able to get there under their own steam, or otherwise you're going to be skewing against those families without cars, So yeah, in those communities, you can probably use the youth zone ethos and the positivity and the ambition, but you'd probably have to do it a different way. And you can probably use the funding model. There'll come a point where we'll innovate and we'll end up finding a way to do it in very dispersed communities. For now, the smallest one we've got is in Chorley, which is a smaller town and smaller than all the other ones in terms of the community. But it still works amazingly because there are a lot of young people out there and there isn't much for them to do outside of school, and it isn't just, obviously in the areas of high deprivation, there's a greater need often, but it's all young people need somewhere safe and inspiring to go in their leisure time. So that's one challenge. Yeah, scale's the other challenge probably, in terms of whether there's enough, it's a big enough community in its own right. But yeah, there's a long way to go. My word, we've only got 14 and I think we could do, 400 before we got to those sorts of questions. There's, if we can do Chorley, then there's, large.
And in terms of the consultation, you said you're working with local authorities and other partners. Are you engaging with young people at that point before you even lay any foundations or build anything? Because I know that previous episodes we've spoken to, one that comes to mind is Badu Sports. So they're based in East London and they work on the Olympic Park, their offices. But they were talking about the challenges that it's not that they weren't consulted, but maybe they weren't consulted enough. Or like you said, you've got a welcoming team in all the OnSide zones. Everyone's like welcoming, come in, loads of win. And they were talking about the fact that it might be difficult for local people to feel like they're welcome into those facilities because they're more for high-end and elite athletes. But I was just interested in terms of building fantastic, and if anyone sees the website, brand new state-of-the-art facilities. And I guess that engagement at the early stages is really important with the young people, so they feel like they can attend.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So at very early stages, whilst we're talking to the local authority, or we'll be bringing together a group of young people, a really diverse group of young people. So we're looking to have for a range of different schools, a range of different backgrounds, young people who are perhaps looked after young people, or young carers, or just the whole shebang. The broader the group, the better. And then we work with them. There's a number of projects that are getting involved in particular, but the most exciting one very early on is they create the brand identity. So we normally appoint a local agency who then work with young people over a period of, say, 6 or 8 weeks, weekly meetings, learning all about branding, learning about brand identity, and then starting to work on what the brand for the new youth zone might be. So the most recent one we did was in Grimsby, and the young people there have Grimsby, coastal town, used to be massive in the fishing industry. It's a bit run down now, I think. I don't think they'd mind me saying that, really. It's lost some of its mojo, but it's coming back now. So the youth zone there, they've called it Horizon, because they're looking out to sea, they're looking beyond their horizon, and it's the design itself incorporates aspects of Grimsby, the aspects of Grimsby that they're very proud of, and it will be an absolutely phenomenal youth zone. So that's the name. It's going to be called Horizon Youth Zone, and every youth zone goes through that process. But then young people get involved in what the internal decor is going to be like, how it's going to feel when you're in there. They also, the name, they go out and vote, so they get about 3,000 votes on that. But
I guess that's always building that kind of ownership and
Absolutely.
feeling belonging to the site, and
every step of the way, because in the end it's a members club. It's going to belong to young people, and to get young people to feel ownership for it. That's the amazing thing about youth zones. When you go in as adults, you're sort of almost invisible, because it's a young people's place. It belongs to them. There's obviously staff, there's volunteers, and everything's going on, but you don't feel somehow that they're guests in there. It is their place. Yeah.
And I guess that membership model is probably a bit of a pioneering model. What type of charges would there be for, like, if I was a young person I wanted to join up?
It's £5 a year to join as a member, and then each time you visit, it's 50p. So, we want young people to make a contribution. We want them to feel they've got to make a decision on the door whether they want to come in or whether they want to spend the 50p in another way, because that, it really helps in terms of they value the offer that's in there. They make best use of it.
Yeah, definitely adding value. And that 50p, if I was a young person and I came in 1 night a week, paid my 50p, what type of activity? I know it's wide range.
Amazing. It's amazing what you get. It's amazing what you get for your 50p. I mean, to start with, it's just warm, safe and dry, big rec area with loud music and loads of mates and having a good time. But then off the big rec area, there's just a whole heap of different activities. There's a massive sports hall, and the activities change about every hour. So you might be doing trampolining, you could be doing basketball, you could be doing badminton, as I said, it just keeps changing and changing. They do roller skating, they do absolutely everything.
And you can opt in and out. So, like, you've got that rec area. That's a place for someone who can opt in and opt out of, like, the more formal sessions and just be there rather than have to be part of the session.
None of the sessions are formal, really. You can more or less walk in at any session at any time and just get involved. So, there's music, there's dance, there's cooking, there's a kitchen, a proper kitchen. There's enterprise and employability. There's media, there's the media suite. So, all the best equipment. I'm bound to have missed out loads of things. An art room, arts and crafts. You might be upcycling your old clothes. It's just, you name it. And to be honest, the youth workers are so entrepreneurial. If any young person says they want to do anything, then they'll
make it happen.
Find a way to do it. Yeah.
And so what age group is that for then? We're looking at primary school upwards, 5 years old, is it?
No, 8
plus,
we sort of start at. So we have juniors, which are 8 to 12-year-olds. And then we have seniors, which are different sessions, which are 13 to 19-year-olds, or 25 if you've got additional needs. So, I mean, young people with additional needs are a big part of what we do. We're very inclusive. For us, it's really, really important for society to work properly, is for everybody to be able to reach their full potential and to be able to enjoy everything on an equal footing. So, everything we expect. There are some separate sessions that we'll run for young people who don't feel confident, but the aim is always to help move young people with additional needs through to accessing the main session and really enjoying all the activities as part of the full open access youth zone.
Yeah, I think that's important. Obviously, setting them up for later life, right? Bringing everyone together and being inclusive. They're going to experience.
That's the whole thing. It's the community working properly. All young people from different backgrounds, different schools, different interests, and we're celebrating diversity. Really, we're celebrating that you'll be different to someone else, and they'll be different to someone else. You'll like different things. You want to do different things, and whereas school, you're all having to do maths, you're all having to do English. So you all dress the same. In the youth zone, it's the exact opposite. You wear what you want. You're friends with who you want to be with. We celebrate the differences and. How exciting it is that the world is full of so many different people.
Because you're focused on bringing everyone together like that, I mean, it's challenging for everyone, but I guess the pandemic and everyone being lockdowns, etc., it must have been really difficult to kind of get that across online, or I'm assuming you pivoted and did various different programs and things like that. But I'm sure with that focus being on bringing everyone together, and I do think that's probably the best way to do it as a young person. You need that social interaction. How difficult was that?
Lockdown's been really hard for young people. The fear of missing out for lots of girls, the frustration of not being able to do, proper exercise for a lot of young people, worrying about their weight, worrying about, I think only yesterday I was hearing that the number of admissions for eating disorders is up by 50%. It's for young people. It's been really difficult, and it's displayed itself in lots of different ways. The struggles young people are having with losing control and worries about education, worries about health, their own health, family health. And not being able to go to the youth zone has in the early stage of the pandemic, when we weren't allowed to be open, was exacerbating it too. So, but the youth workers basically, they're real can-do people. They got out there, the telephone list, and they just started ringing everybody. And we're ringing 600 young people a week. Just going through one by one, having a chat with them on the phone. How are you doing? How's family? What's happening? Giving young people some visibility. That they were visible, that somebody cared about them, because during the early stage of the pandemic, everyone was just trapped at home, and certainly there were big families trapped in small accommodation, no gardens, or just really, really difficult. But as we did a lot of online stuff, so loads of fun stuff online, and then as soon as we could, we were back open. So we've been open. We were open last summer for summer holiday clubs. Been open since. I mean, there've been phases where we've only been allowed to get young people with vulnerabilities into the building, but we've done stuff on parks, we've done outreach. Literally, youth workers, they won't stop. They care passionately about young people, and if we can't do it one way, we'll go and do it another way. Obviously in a safe way. They will. Nothing gets between them and their mission of helping young people.
Yeah, and I guess this summer just had the restrictions lifted now, but I think this summer's going to be bigger than ever, right? Everyone looking
yes, very exciting. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're battling all of the pingdemic now, aren't we?
Yeah. And are you still, do you have to operate in kind of bubble, or not, maybe not have to, but do you operate in kind of bubbles and stuff like that?
Yeah, we were doing bubbles. We were doing all of the requirements. We were operating to the requirements, and obviously now we're in the same situation as lots of other people, which is that self-isolating is becoming an issue.
So if you've got enough staff, then you as many children can come as long as you have staff. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. But everyone's looking forward now. They're looking forward to a time when they can really, this September onwards feels like that's when we're really going to be in our best shape.
Definitely. And so one of the questions from myself is around communication. So you've got the 14 different charities you're working with across the country. What's the kind of either the challenge or your approach to bringing all those organisations together as much as possible? How would you, if you're going to give any advice on that, what would you say is the best thing to focus on to bring partners together?
Okay. I mean, obviously now there's sort of change to lots of stuff on Zoom. That makes the meetings a lot easier. The geography doesn't come into it now for meetings between all the chief execs or the youth work managers or all the volunteer coordinators, things like that. But I mean, there's obviously there's a huge place for being in the youth zone and visiting each other and learning and experiencing what we actually do. We have quite a big training program, and for example, those that are on the Aspiring Leaders course would go to another youth zone and would spend months at another youth zone doing a role. Because if you see another youth zone, there's enough similarities to train and learn from, but there's enough differences for you to really expand your horizons too. I mean, the opportunities are endless. Obviously, everybody, we're all charities, so they have to look after all of their funding and their resourcing, and they're trying to help as many young people as possible in their communities. So they can't be all the time off going elsewhere. But it can help you do a really good job if you're able to go to a sister youth zone and learn where they might be slightly ahead of you on one particular aspect of what we do. And then in reverse, people can come to you too. The addition of Zoom is really quite helpful, because where you don't need to be in the youth zone, then you can get together very quickly. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, we were talking just before, so you can get 4 or 5 meetings in a day that might take you 4 or 5 days in the past. There's really positives to it. You mentioned before around the kind of scaling up of the sites. You said 400, but is there a goal in mind? Like, what's the next kind of milestone for OnSide in terms of number of sites or number of zones?
We just want to do as many as we can, but it's always got to be done at the highest quality. Each one has to set up. We're very ambitious for ourselves. Each one we do has to be better than the last one in terms of how we set it off. Because if we set it off to a really high standard, it makes it easier for the team who are joining and part of that youth zone, and they will get higher faster if we start them off higher.
So it's like refining that kind of that process of launching, like refining that launch process.
On that. We've done a lot of work on refining the process. And so, we feel we've got it pretty, strong across a whole range of areas now. I mean, it can always improve. I know you can always improve. But so we're sort of staffing ourselves up and resourcing ourselves with the right skills to do 4 a year every year. And so over the next few years, we're planning to move up to that sort of level and then keep going at that level. But most of it depends on how much funding we can raise, because we've got a great model. We know what we do works for young people, and we know that it's sustainable, but we need to find the funding to allow the capital funding really to get all the youth zones open. So if we can get to 4 a year every year, I think we'll be doing really, really well. And then, who knows, over the next generation that could have us.
And is it a UK, looking to the future, is always going to be UK centric focus, or are you looking at branching out into the rest of the world, etc., sharing the model and going global?
Who knows? I mean, at the moment, there's so much to go at England and the rest of the United Kingdom. I mean, they're all in England at the moment. We'd love to have one in Glasgow, or, any of the other big conurbations in Scotland or in Wales, with some areas that would really benefit Northern Ireland, Belfast, or, or the parts of Northern Ireland. So there's so much to go at across the United Kingdom. I think we'd be a bit much to go. But, there's no reason why not, because it's basically, there's nothing about it that's restricted. The new charity you create is self-sustaining, independent. It doesn't require OnSide to manage it. It's got a local board, it's got a local staff team, it's got a fantastic fundraising model, and it can go on and do amazing things for its community. So, we just want to help all communities have this.
And I guess, so 2011, you must be seeing some kind of alumni or people coming back into the centres, and from that, like 10 years-ish. So those guys were 18, people who started with you at the start now.
Bolton have got a head start on us on that, because
your generations in there.
And there are a lot of the staff team used to be members at the club, and in fact some of the staff team have gone to other youth zones to help them get set up. Or there's a number of people who I can think of who are across the network now who started out in Bolton. But then the same applies the other way now. As the more youth zones we get, the more opportunities are for all of the staff right across the youth zones. And young people who are on the development group often end up. So I talked about the branding earlier on. So some of the young people who get involved in the early stages work, which might be 2.5 years before the youth zone opens, and they work right way through to opening, can actually, at opening, we've had a number of cases of where young people have ended up being qualified and paid youth workers at the centre. So definitely, it really helps. I think it strengthens your offer no end if staff members have come through the club. They know how they used to use the club. They know what makes it a great offer. They know what kept them coming back year after year.
We touched on it earlier on around kind of leading female leadership, female executive leadership. Just want to touch on it in terms of what's the kind of distance travel been since you started your career? Like, what was it like then to what it's like now? Do you think there's any more? Obviously, hopefully there's more to go, but how much have we moved forward since then?
No, I mean, it's fantastic to see. It's absolutely fantastic to see how, I mean, it still is on the agenda, isn't it? Women and parity between men and women. But it's nothing like what it was back then. It was like, but I'd like to see that across all areas of diversity, really. It would be there is good progress being made, but there's a long way to go, I think, in diversity of all aspects.
Because do you think back then, I know there's massive challenges for you when you started in the role, but that resilience you had, not many people would have that, or maybe I've gone through things at an early age to be able to cope with stuff in their working life. Do you think that kind of helped get through it at that point, rather than
Probably.
maybe think I've had enough of this, I don't want to be working in this environment, walking away?
We're all a product of our experiences in life, and so it probably, it definitely will have helped me. But I wouldn't like to think that you had to have. I would hate to think to have trauma in your life in order to be able to be successful, and I certainly think there's a lot of barriers to success for, I think about young people or young adults with disabilities. There's a long way to go in terms of it being equal representation at all levels throughout all companies. And to be honest, because of their experiences, they're bringing something. It might not be, it's be different to my experiences, but they'll be bringing something special at their perspective. We need to make changes in this country and across the world, really, to make sure that all people can reach their full potential, as young people, as young adults, and that they can, then they don't have to have some special resilience badge or some, that they just can, the opportunities are there for everyone to find their way, and they're encouraged,
I agree with you. And in terms of any approaches to leading, so do you have anything that you've kind of developed over the years, or that you always utilize as your almost business philosophy or your way of leading an organization? Have you got anything that you'd be able to share with us?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I think if you asked my team that, they'd have a lot to say on it. Basically, probably the one fundamental thing that I do is I drive pace into an organization. I work on the basis that if you don't go after things with pace, and it probably is from coming from the food industry and from the private sector where it's very, very competitive, but if you're not going after something with pace, you might never get there because you might overcomplicate it. You might design it in such a way that it's so perfect you can't actually do it. So pace is it really, and to, when in your decisions, when you're looking at your solutions, you're looking for ones that you can actually deliver in a reasonable time frame. So, and innovation, really, to come at everything with a very innovative mindset. So, we have lots of debates in the team, lots of lively conversations, and but we're always working at pace. I think that would be the one.
Oh, I love that. It's really transferable as well.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things, because that'll make it difficult to get there too. Keep your eye on the goal. That would be mine.
Perfect. So, a bit more of a personal question. You talked about Reiki earlier on, and got trained in that. Do you have any habits or routines that you use at the moment to kind of keep yourself performing at your best abilities, top performance, and or just dealing with the stresses of running a national organisation? Is there anything you do every day or put in place?
I'm just a very practical person. That's me. Yeah, I'm just very practical, and so I just I like achieving things. So I just.
It's kind of goal-oriented, setting the goals.
Goal-orientated, really, and would always be pretty much, enjoying ticking off my lists, getting through stuff, helping others, nothing better than helping my family or, helping those around me.
Yeah. Last question for me is, if you were going to go back to give yourself some advice, if you're able to go back in time, give yourself some advice just as you're starting out in your career, what would you go back and tell the young Kathryn starting out in her career?
Just needed to believe in myself more, really. Very low self-esteem, and I know youth zones work tirelessly to help young people believe in themselves, but I don't know how you do it, but I would be telling myself you need to believe in yourself more.
Oh, yeah, perfect. I think everyone does need a little bit of a confidence boost, self-esteem boost when you're a youngster, so great advice. Kathryn, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you giving up the time to talk to me, and some great learnings and insights there.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.